Welcome to the banks of Willow Park Fishery, where for the next 48 hours I'll be trying to get a bit of revenge on the place. And the reason I say that is because the last time I fished here, I blanked. It was one of those sessions I could have really done without blanking on because it was a carbology versus between myself and Luke. I blanked, he caught one fish, which meant he won. Left a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, but may I add, it was probably one of the only times he did beat me in that series. Anyway, that's enough of the past. The reason I'm back down here is because I was only here about a month or so ago filming the European Adaptive Carp Championships. Wasn't fishing myself, but saw loads of lovely fish caught, and that got me thinking I really want to get back here, catch some of these lovely fish for myself and get a bit of revenge on the place. So I have got 2 days ahead of me. I'll be off on Friday afternoon. It's now Wednesday midday actually. I've been faffing around. Let's get to my swim where everything is actually all set up and ready. I couldn't be bothered to film it all set it up. I don't think you guys care. It slows me down and I just wanted to get things sorted before the rain comes in, which looks like it's just behind my shoulder. Might be a wet one. Oh, and also, last week shorts and t-shirt. This week hat, jumper, trousers. What is going on? Well, first things first, I need to find a spot to fish. Now, the peg that I'm in is peg 5, and I booked onto this peg prior to coming here through the catch-up, nice and easy. And I didn't just pick it at random because I like the look of it and it's quite close to the car park. That's all just the convenience side of things. But actually, I phoned up head office on site and said, look, coming up here Wednesday to Friday, where's my best chance of a bite? Where are the fish localised, or are they hanging around a certain area? Because those people in the shop and the people that are on site all the time are my eyes and ears while I'm not here. So rather than just picking a swim at random and not knowing any background knowledge of the fishing or where they've been coming up the previous few days, I asked their knowledge and they said basically the middle part of the lake has been doing quite a lot of fish, and I can see that now I'm here, there's quite a few of us are dotted around, and all of our areas that we can fish kind of go to a similar sort of area. Of course, you've got areas which only I can fish, and same for them as well. So in front of me, I've got up to 18 wraps of water straight out. So I have clipped up my spotted marker rod at 18 wraps, just so I know where my boundary is. I do not intend fishing that far. I don't want to be right on the edge of my border, unless it seems that there's a holy grail of a spot out there. I'm going to come back, and there should be a couple of features. So talking to them in the shop when I got here first thing as well, for a bit more knowledge about this swim specifically, there's a gravelly bar, sort of plateauy area out far, and then closer in, there's another gravel bar that runs along closer in. So my plan probably is going to be 2 rods out on the spot, out in with the furthest spot, and then another one closer in that I can just catapult buoys over the top of, and that will be my my plan of attack going forward. So I've got the rod clipped up at 18 wraps. It's time to just have a few casts. I don't want to go mad. I just want to find a rough area, and hopefully I can find it quite easily, because from what you were telling me, it's pretty obvious when you crack down on the clear area. So 18 wraps. Let's just ping that out. Oh, that hit down straight away. So let's pull that back. It feels fairly smooth. I can't say I'm feeling anything massively smooth. It's coming back easy. There's the gravel. Right, so I've had about 5 casts straight out at 18 wraps, and I wasn't intending to fish at 18 wraps. As I said, I'm going to eat those words, because at 18 wraps it smacks down on that gravel bar, and it's more towards the left of my boundary, right as there's a marker of a tree that sticks up above all the rest. So just going to have one more on the very left of my boundary. And yeah, it's polished. It's night and day compared to the first cast that I did, which felt like it's coming back through custard. So there we go, my first spot is found. I'm going to be putting 2 rods out on that, but there should be another gravel bar closer in, and the guy next door has had his 3rd fish of the trip. He only got her yesterday, and he's had all 3 of his off of about 6 wraps out. I'm guessing is on the same gravel bar. Oh, there it is. Oh, and that's why local knowledge is your friend on places like this, where you got to pre-book a swim, you don't know much about it. Yes, I've got 2 days ahead of me, and I probably would have found them eventually, but the baddie said your boundary is 18 wraps, there's a spot out there, and then if you bring it closer in, there's another spot. There's a few casts about, and that lead was smooth when it went out. It is now really rough and jagged, so that's how clean some of those spots are. So I've now got 2 spots sorted, time to get some bait out. Well, that's the now battered lead removed and the spot is now attached. Now I'll run through exactly what I'm doing bait-wise in a second, but all 3 rods are now out on the spot. The left and middle rod are on the far spot, 18 wraps, nice and polished and clean. They went out nicely, but at the moment there is no bait around them, or at least no bait that I've put out. Now, being a busy day ticket, you've always got to bear in mind that if there's been spots that have been producing lately, that's probably because a lot of people have been fishing them, and there's probably going to be bait from other anglers out there. Now, if it's good quality bait and everything, likelihood is that's all been mopped up, but you can never guarantee what people are using before you. So there could be some bait out there already. So I'm not going to go too heavy. I'm going to put 10 spods out on the far spot and 10 spods out on the right hand spot as well, just to see if I can get some activity going in the swim. If I find I'm getting bites thick and fast, which will be lovely, then I'll introduce more bait. If not, then I'll just sit on it and wait for something to happen, maybe top up the spot every now and then just to get a bit of interest. Now, hook bait wise, pretty much exactly the same across the board. Rigs and everything I'll go through tomorrow. Oh, nearly got wiped out by geese then. But the hook baits are pretty much the same. I've got match the hatch cell boilies to start with, 15mm. I've just ever so slightly shaved the top off and then attached a topper, 2 of which have a pink topper and 1 of which has a yellow top. And the reason for that is the far spot has a pink topper and a yellow topper. If I find that I'm getting bites on one or the other, then I will switch the rigs accordingly. But I have more confidence in the pink, and that's definitely nothing to do with the fact that we all recently watched the Korda Underwater where they left pink. But anyway, I still can't resist putting yellow on one of them, so we'll see what happens there. But the bait-wise is really simple as well. This venue is a boilie and pellet only, so I've just gone straight boilie approach. These are 15mm cell, which I've had soaking in a couple of bottles of Smart Liquid, a load of the cell stick mix as well. I've just had that soaking for the last few days, so as you can see, it's pretty sticky. That should be rolling off there, but they're slowly coming off the spoon. Tip it a bit more, there we go. They're going in clumps, so they're really, really sickly sweet and sticky. And just to knock back some of that stickiness and soak up some of the liquid, I've then just put a little bit of the matching stick mix on them to soak some of that out. That may make it a bit easier to spot out, but also all those little particles that come off the boilies should then cloud up the water a little bit, add a bit more of attraction, but they're not filling them up. It's just getting that scent out into the water column, and all those liquids and highly boosted boilies should get some attention in the swim. So that's enough waffling on. I've been here for several hours now. I've just been taking my time with a 48-hour session ahead of me. It was pretty long from my standards. I'm taking it slow. All the rods are out. Time to add some bait in that. Hopefully the fish will start coming along soon. The rain's arrived as well, which isn't great. It was borderline sleet a minute ago. What is going on?
All my life I was looking for a sign. Wasn't sure where to find a peace of mind. Sometimes you can see things when it ain't time. Well, for you I'll be putting it all aside.
We've been pretty lucky today with the weather. There's been a lot of rain clouds and storms rolling to the side of the complex. I've been watching them, heard the thunder, and watched the funnels of rain absolutely hammering down in places, and somehow we've avoided it until now. It's about to absolutely belt it down. It's come over pretty dark, the sun's gone, and the few spots of rain have just started. I've heard the odd rumble of thunder from this bank of clouds, so it could potentially be pretty rough. But fishing-wise, no fish yet, not seen anything, not had a beep or anything. I've left the left and middle rod, which is the far spot, as they are, but I have put a bit more bait over the right hand rod with the catapult, because I can reach that with the catapult rather than just a few spods that are going to be quite a condensed sort of build up of bait dropped from the spod. I've just sprayed it around so it's a bit of a wider area. Hopefully that triggers a response. Nothing's happened so far. I've seen a couple of fish come out, but that's about it, so it's not like anyone else is having it off. But here comes the rain. I'm going to jump into the bivvy and probably cue a little rain montage. Well, thankfully that storm passed pretty much as quickly as it came. That being said, when it was here, it was pretty savage. We had thunder, lightning, strong wind. The rain was torrential, and even the birds outside looked like they were trying to get into my bivvy. It was horrible. Thankfully, the rods didn't go off whilst that was happening, but unfortunately, they still haven't gone off. Now it's stopped. So I'm stood out here making the most of the dry weather, and looking out over the lake, I'm starting to see some shows. As expected from previous experiences, they show in the evenings and the mornings on here, and they're doing that. And thankfully, I'm seeing quite a few signs on my distance rods, at least on that area as well, and a few signs on the closer in ones. Just for my own peace of mind, I'm going to bring all 3 back in, clip them all back up, fresh hook baits, and I'm going to add 3 bait stringers to them for a bit of extra protection and attraction. and then just put them back out and sit on them for the night. Maybe a few more spods over the top and a bit of cab bolted bait over the right hand one, and that'll be me done for today. The first day of a 40-hour session always seems like a bit of a manic rush. I think once that's done, I'll be a bit more settled in, I'm confident in what I'm doing, and hopefully the night is a productive one, and if not, something to report in the morning. Well, I feel like that was a bit of an incomplete morning sequence. I got the kettle boiling overshot, the rods on the rest, the golden light being cast on the far tree line, but nothing to indicate I've had a good night. There was no sling hung up on the fence or Matt doing the same, the net's still in the same spot, and I don't think those bobbins have moved a millimetre, not so much as a beep last night, so it doesn't mean I slept very well. Woke up by the odd truck going past on the motorway next door, but other than that, dead quiet. This morning I heard a few fish roll, and they sounded quite close to where I am, to be fair, so I don't think I'm a million miles off the fish. But to add salt into open wounds, when I got up from my morning stretches to wake me back up, I peered around the lake, and as I came out the baby door, the lads on the far bank, or the bank to the right of me, were playing yet another fish. They had 2 or 3 yesterday after getting hit after me, so they've clearly hit it right. They've got the good spots, or found a spot where they want to be, and I do think they might be fishing slightly closer in. So my plan of attack today is going to leave them for a bit longer. There might be a morning bite window, and then bring them all in, fresh hook baits again, but I'm going to put 2 out on the closer spot. It's easier managed, it's closer in. The guy that was next door to me yesterday before he left had 3 of his 5 bites from the closer in spot on this closer in bar, so it makes sense to put 2 onto that spot and leave 1 out on the far spot. It also makes it a bit easier casting too tight on a spot at that range. Yes, I've done it, but I'd rather have 1 spot on out there and 2 closer in that I know I can manage easily, and pull baits over the top and go from there. Other than that, I feel like I'm fishing it the best I can. Baits out there, rigs are out there, I know that they work. So it's just a bit of a waiting game. And I've got to remember that I haven't even been at the venue for 24 hours yet. I've got more of my session ahead of me than what I've used up. I've got to remember that. Hopefully it'll all come good. It will all come good. Well, as expected, absolutely nothing wrong with any of the rigs when I wound them in. I pretty much knew that's going to be the case. That's why I'm using this setup, which I'll get onto in a second. But I just wanted to freshen up the hook base and change around the rods a little bit more. I had a walk around the lake, not much happening elsewhere other than the bank to my right, where I think they had 5 fish since yesterday afternoon. So they've had a few, and they're fishing mainly closer in, which is why I'm going to change these 2 rods to be on the closer in spot. And the left rod, which is already back out, is back on that 18 wrap spot. And I have seen fish rolling at that range since that's gone out. So hopefully that bodes well for that rod. But these 2 are going to go closer in. I've checked the spot a bit more detail with the marking rod, and it is a vast spot. So I don't need to be too precise of where these go out, but I'm going to get them both on the same spot. Spray some bait over the top of them, probably a bit more essential cell, because that's a bit more high vis. And that brings me onto the hook baits. I've changed them ever so slightly. Before I was using, all 3 of them were on a 50mm cell bottom bait, shaved ever so slightly where I then matched the topper on top of them, and they were pink or yellow toppers. I've now changed them ever so slightly, so 2 of them are essential cell bottom baits. So as you can see, yellow compared to the more beigey, duller tones of this normal cell, so it's a bit more high vis. And then the toppers are all pink now. So I've got 1 of them still on the normal cell, but the other 2 essential cell and all pink toppers. And what I've done is just shaved the top of them off ever so slightly and shaved the top of one of the quads, the toppers, so that when they marry up to each other, they're really, really flush. And then on the bottom of the bottom baits, I've also shaved them flat as well. And the reason for that is because I don't want these to be wafting around like wafters. I've tried the wafters, there's a bit too much movement. I think if I'm going high vis and wafters, it could just be a bit too much in their face. These are just high vis and shouldn't really move around. Because I've got that flat bottom and the topper on the other side, the topper lands upright and the flat bottom sits flush on the lay bed. I've tested in the margin. Obviously it doesn't always land exactly like it does in the margin when you're out there, but the theory behind it is lands flat down, the topper is at the top, and whatever angle a fish comes at, that topper is visible. They're not wafting around, but there is a little bit of buoyancy added to them. So that's the hook bait change wrapped up. Time to get these rods back out, and then I will talk to you a bit more in depth about the rigs I'm actually using and why I've opted for this. Well, I've done everything I can do now. It's up to the carp whether they want to show up. All 3 rods have went out really, really nicely. I felt them down nicely. I know they're going to be presented well. I'm happy with the rigs. I've topped up the spots with a few more spoms as well, and I've incorporated a bit of the essential cell into the spod mix as well. I've crumbed up a load of it as well, so I've got small bits and larger bits, topped off with a bit more smart liquid, so all really stinky, some high vis, some bit more lower tones of the normal cell, and it's just up to the carp now if they're going to show up. I'm going to leave the rods in position unless I have to redo them for any reason, or if I have a carp, of course, which is what we're hoping for. Now, I did say I'd run through the rig in a bit more detail, and I go from each end and tell you exactly why I've made the decisions I've gone for. But it's worth noting that I am using the Gemini Tidy Booms, and they are a supporter of the channel, so a massive thank you to them. As you can see, they do loads of different options, whether you go for spinner rigs, turbo Germans, combis, stiff hinges, Ronnies, everything like that. And it's not just for this video that I'm using them. I've been using Gemini products for years. So I really appreciate them coming on board and helping me out with this video. And as you can see, I am using the 5.5 inch Ronnie spinner swivel. Now, the reason I've gone for the 5.5 inch is because all of my rigs I tend to keep around the 5 to 7 inch size, unless I'm using a solid bag rig, of course. Let me just double check the focus is good there so you can see everything in more detail. So the 5.5 inches is just because that's how I normally fish. I don't like anything longer than that. I think that's long enough, especially for where I'm presented at the moment, where it's clean bottom and I want as soon as they possibly can to hit the resistance of the lead. Now, the kick-away properties is exactly what I was after as well, because I'm fishing on clean bottom. If I was to get an aborted take, I want that to reset nicely, which it will, but also there's enough give in there so that if a carp comes from any direction, they can still suck it in and not be inhibited by too stiff a boom section. Now, there's loads of different options in the booms as well. I'm using the 5.5, there's also 7 inch and 9 inch, and all of which share the same properties, that are 100% fluorocarbon with a refractive index rating of 1.42. What that means in basic terms is once in the water, it's as close to invisible as you can possibly get. They're 30-pound breaking strain, and they have fused loops at either end. So again, if I get a little bit closer for you there, you'll see that they've got fused loops rather than knots. And this is way stronger than any kind of conventional knot. And they're really consistent. So if you like consistency in your rigs, all of the rigs I've tied up on this trip and all the ones out there are identical in size and length. So that is why I've opted for that boom. Now, moving down to the spinner swivel section. Now, the reason I've gone for the spinner swivel is because there's loads more movement. As you can see, spinning that round, that hook is not being touched at all with all that movement from the boom, and vice versa. If I was to spin the hook round, there's absolutely no issues with that boom as well. And I like to have lots of movement in my hook baits on whatever rig I use for the anti-eject properties that I like to look for. Now, something a little bit different on the hook side of things. If I focus on that again, you'll see that my hook bait is not mounted directly to the hook. Now, the reason for that is because, yes, most people that tie up a Ronnie rig, or a lot of people that you tie them, would put it straight on the shank, and you've got the movement back and forth. There's no separation from the hook and the hook bait, really. So if a fish ejects the hook bait, it's kind of pulling the rig with it, pulling the hook with it. By having this little D section, which I've tied on with some supple braid, it gives a lot more movement for the hook bait. So if something tries to eject that out, that hook bait not only can move the distance of the shank of the hook, but can then bunch up and move all the way to there before that hook is even affected, giving the hook as much time as possible to do what it needs to do to hook a fish. So how I've tied that is quite simple as well. It may seem complicated, but you get some supple braid, pass a loop through the eye of the hook, add your little hook ring swivel, and then put that loop round the hook and pull it down to the size you want, so that loop can't come off the hook. Hope that makes sense. Now, to hold that in position, you then just use a simple knotless knot setting. I do a few turns down the hook to pinch it in place, then I cut the little tag end off, a couple more turns down to make it a bit neater, and then that last tag end goes back through the eye of the hook. Now, you may think, well, what do you do with that tag end, because that's going to be all over the place. But remember, this is being attached to the spinner swivel by the swivel straight into the eye of the hook. So that knotless knot section and loop is under no pressure whatsoever during the fight, so it doesn't need to be that strong. So once that's in position, I then put a little bit of the shrink tubing onto the shank of the hook, ready to be attached to the swivel. These are pre-cut, ready to go, little bits of shrink tubing from Gemini as well, so it's ideal, keeps it nice and neat, and again, consistent, which is what I look for in my rigs. Focus back up on there. And once that's attached and shrunk down, as you can see, that loop is nice and neat. You've got all that movement, but all the resistance and all the stress and strain that hook's going to be under is on that swivel. So there's absolutely no risk of losing a fish because you've tied that knotless knot with loose tag ends. Do not worry about that. So that's the reason for the boom. the spinner swivel for the movement, the separation from the hook bait to the hook with the D-rig. Now you will also notice that that's nothing new. The shot on the hook, it's very, very popular in the fishing world right now, made popular recently because of the latest Korda Underwater. Now I'm not going to be one of those that says it's been around for years, I've been using it for years. That's not the case, but I did do a video on the shot on the hook rig probably a year or so back for pole position. That's who these little shot on the hook bits are from, and I've been using it since then. So I have actually been using it since before the video, but that just reaffirmed how effective the shot on the hook is. And for those of you that maybe haven't seen it, what that does is makes the point of the hook the heaviest point. So all those items in conjunction with the movement of the bait, all that time for the hook to drop, once that bait is blown back to there, that shot on the hook is making the point of the hook super, super heavy. So as you can see, if that's blown back, that hook is naturally wanting to drop. So if the carp tries to eject it, that hook is dropping down and going into the fish's lip. So you may then think, well, is that going to be in the way when you play the fish? It's not. It moves around. It's on like a little silicone loop, pre-drilled loop. So it moves around really simply. So it goes in really easily. And I'll show you that. There we are. I've pushed the hook all the way around into my jumper, and it will come all the way back out, and all it's done is move that bead background. And you will notice as well that this is barbless hooks. It's a barbless venue. So from the way that I fish with my lead setup tends to help with barbless venues as well, because I use a semi-fixed lead clip system, so that it, sort of the friction of the swivel in the lead clip is the bolt effect. Fish shakes its head, that swivel pulls out. Normally, using a sharp enough hook, that's done the business to drill the hook point home. They've then got no pivot point to get rid of the hook, because that weight is no longer directly attached to the rig. Your lead is staying on the floor, and this is moving freely with the line going through your lead clip. You may find then that your bites are quite up and down, a bit sporadic, a bit like a bream bite sometimes. And after that initial shake of the head and they think, I ain't getting away with this, they then bolt. So the bites can be pretty savage on a running or semi-fixed lead clip setup. And the reason I say that helps more with barbless venues is because they've not got that pivot point to try and ditch the hook. Even with barbless hooks, you tend to find it's a bit easier to hook and land them. So that is all the thinking behind my rig. It's probably a bit of a long bit, but I like to explain the reasons behind the things I'm doing. And also the other thing to mention is, because this is a Ronnie setup, if I was to then choose to fish on a pop-up, focus once more, all I've got to do is just put a pop-up on, and then that will sit more like this, or with the shot on the hook, it will sit flush with the shot sort of parallel with the boom, so it wafts around. Or I could take that little shot off and it will then sit up more like this, but I've still got all those elements of the hook bait separation from the hook to make things work exactly how I want. And one little tip, I know I'm talking a lot here, but the hook bait presentation uses kind of like a snowman presentation with bait floss. As you can see, it's quite loose at the moment, this top one. A little tip or trick I learned from Robert Burgess when I was filming him once is, when that's loose, if you want it to be nice and tight and you've blobbed it down, just hold the bottom bait and keep twisting that top one. And what that's doing is obviously twisting the floss that's within it, and when it's twisted, it's shorter. So I can already feel that resistance is built, and that is now really snug to the hook bait, can't move around. So quite a handy little trick if you've never used that before. But that is all of my thinking in probably nearly a 10-minute piece. Apologies, but that's what I'm doing, and I'm basically just talking until the rods go off. What else do you want to talk about? This is a very one-way conversation, because this is a video I'm uploading and you can only comment. So it's a stupid thing to say, but let me know. What do you think of the rig? Is there any elements you'd change to it? Do you like certain elements of it? And what's your go-to rig fishing on clear spots like I am right now? Would you be doing similar, or would you be doing completely different? And I know loads of you are probably going to comment saying solid bags, because that's really good up here at Willow Park. I'm aware. For once, I didn't bring the solid bag kit. Well, here comes the rain. Hopefully it brings some fish. Fresh rig ready to go. A couple 3-bait stringers in case that cast doesn't go well. And the reason for the recast as you can probably gather, finally a rod's gone off, and it was the long range rod. I was expecting it to be the closer in ones. And in there, if it focuses, I'll do it manually. Let's stop relying on autofocus. There we go. Is my fish. Right. Let's get it unhooked and rod back out. So I reckon, all being well, there might be a chance of another fish tonight. Oh boy, am I happy to see this one in the sling. It's just gone 11 o'clock and going to bed I was starting to get a little bit despondent, thinking it's not going to happen, is it? But a couple of beeps, and I got out. Actually, by the time I lifted this rod, probably a good minute after the first beep, because it was a single beep, no movement on the bobbin, another single beep. So I got out and I was looking at the rod, and it just dropped back a beep, and that was enough for me to think, yeah, there's something on. But it's, 3 beeps this gave, so there goes my little speech about how the bites on this are normally a bit timid and then they fly off. Because this thing must have been kiting on a tight line, because by the time I lifted into it, obviously clearly on, but it only gave me 3 beeps. And a pretty docile battle, to be honest. Came in, and at £19, 2 ounces, it's not quite the £20 mark, but hopefully this is a sign of things to come. The rod's already pinged back out with a fresh rig, fresh bait and everything. And I might put 1 or 2 spods on the top of it, just in case there was more than just this guy out there taking some of that bait. But what a relief. Oh, thank you, mister. You saved a blank. Hopefully there's more of you to come. Let's quickly show you the other side as well. There's a little blemish on that side, but this side is perfect. This is a hard fought for fish. Not the biggest, but certainly the biggest smile on my face. Thank you. Let's get you back. Whoa. Got another one. And, as you can see, it is on the same rod again. So, playing that fish took quite a while. It's a bit bigger than the first one, and it wiped out those 2 rods. Those bobbins were at the top. So I'm going to whip them back in, clip them up at 18, and send them back out to the spot that I've just had 2 bites. And this one, when it's ready, will go back out at the 10 rod spot. So despite doing everything yesterday and saying I'm going to fish 2 short and 1 long, I've now had 2 bites long and nothing short. So this one is going to get unhooked and photographed. Let him rest a little bit, because that was one hell of a scrap. Just did not want to give up. As you can see, this one is a little bit bigger. So, happy days. I guess that's a good mid-20. So, let's get those in, ping back out at 18, and then we'll deal with him. But yeah, let's let him have a rest, because we're both pretty tired from that bow. Whew. £30, 5 ounces. What a turn up for the books. Well, if I was feeling a bit despondent going to bed, I'm certainly going to be enjoying my morning brew, feeling the complete opposite, because with a £19 3, I think the first one was, and now a £30 5, it's all come good. This gave a good old scrap, but it's always hard to tell in the night on the head torch how big something is, until I lifted it out and thought, yeah, that's every bit of £30. Oh, what a result. And I've got the 2 long rods back out, and the last rod that this one's obviously just been unhooked from is going to go back out on the short spot, and I've already had a liner on the long rod, so there may yet be another fish in this session yet, but who knows. What a result. I came here for a bit of revenge, and I've certainly got it. 2 fish in the final night. Completely swung things around, and definitely swung my mood around. Alright, just show you both sides. I actually think, I know it's September already, this may be one of the bigger fish for me this year in the UK, which is nice. Brilliant. Oh, made up with that. Let's get you back. Well, it's another absolutely gorgeous morning down here at Willow Park Fishery, and finally it all came good. I've got a smile on my face this morning because the morning sequence of rod shots and actually a kingfisher on the rod I just about caught it before it flew off, but also, more importantly, the sling hung up on the fence behind drying out. Although it's not really going to dry, it got down to 4 degrees last night, so it was a pretty cold one, but it was a productive one. For some reason, they suddenly switched on the second night on the long spot. So sod's law, I moved 2 rods back to the shorter spot and left 1 long, but it's a good job I did, because that did both the bites. I then switched 2 onto the long spot after the second fish, and 1 on the short, and I've had nothing since. So it really was just night bites. And after talking to one of the bailiffs yesterday, he said it's predominantly been day bites. So going into the night, I was thinking, that's my chance gone. But thankfully, it kicked off. And not just for me either. One, after I had my first fish, the guy next door had one. And I can't remember if it's the first fish or the second fish I had. I saw head torch on over there, head torch on over there. So clearly, last night... You okay? Clearly last night the fish decided to have a bit of a feed. The weather's been up and down, so maybe a couple consistent cold nights, they kind of got a bit more used to it. Who knows? But thankfully, everything I put into practice and used on this session worked. Because you've always got that bit in your mind, you're thinking, am I doing it right? Should I have changed this? Should I have come with solid bags, which is what a lot of people are using? But thankfully, the rigs paid off, the bait approach paid off, and a 30-pounder in 4-degree conditions last night, I'm over the moon. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and maybe you take something away from this to stick with your guns. If you think you're fishing in the right way, stick with it. Sometimes it's not down to you, it's just down to whether the fish are there or not. I've thoroughly enjoyed this trip. I need to bring the rods in now and get on home. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Oh, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Something like 70% of you that watch aren't subscribed. Mad. Just give that little subscribe button and hit the bell icon. You won't miss uploads. 1 a week. Content like this. Hopefully sometimes better. Right, I gotta go. Oh.